Hi everyone, I'm Chauncey Nebula, and today let's talk about how expensive is too expensive. One thing that I hear a lot is that people say, oh, I don't want to get into miniature wargaming, or I don't want to get into trading card games, or this specific game or that specific game, because it's too expensive. However, in many of these cases, the person that says this already plays a game or does something that seems to be about the same cost. So this video is really going to be looking at how expensive is it to get into certain games. Like to have a playable force for the game, how expensive is it? And how does that compare with other games? Now, of course, whether or not one or more of these are going to be too expensive depends on you, the individual, the consumer. But I think this is a useful little thought experiment for seeing whether or not gaming really is too expensive. So I'm going to go over a couple different games and show off, just based off of some of the games that I play, what you're looking at to get started in the game. And then at the end, we're going to kind of look at what are you getting for each of these things. Well, in comparison to one another. I'm going to tell you what you get in like the starter or whatever when I show it off, because otherwise it's just a number. So the first thing that I think we should talk about is Blood and Plunder. To get a single nationality starter from Firelock Games website is currently 79 American dollars. That's not including paying any shipping. That's not including adding on anything extra. And that's just going to give you enough models to build a small force. I bought the online starter kit, which includes 8 flibustiers, 8 freebooters, 4 marineros, and 4 either Les Enfants Perdus or Forlorn Hope. And then, in addition, the English Commander Mini. Now, I can play that on the tabletop, and I can get about 150 points out of that. It's a little squirrely. You have to really load them up with stuff, and it works a lot better if you can maybe swap out some stuff to get a few more minis on the table, but in general, it's a pretty decent little 150 point army. Now, granted, you can't play sea games or amphibious games with that because you'll need to buy a ship, but just purely in getting started, you're looking at 79 US dollars right now. Of course, you'll also need dice and a tape measure and so on, but for all of these, accessories are not being included because every single game requires accessories of some description. Next is Team Yankee, and I actually have the Soviet Starter Force box here. The box is currently empty because I have taken the models out and I have finished building them. But this is a box that costs about $100, and in that box you get 5 T-80s, 2 BMP-3s, 5 of the this little body, which can be either Spandrel anti-tank or an anti-air unit or a BDRM-2. And it also includes 2 Hind helicopters and 2 Frogfoot fighters. And this box can get you between 69 and 75 points if you build this as a T-80 shock tank company. Of course, you could build this differently, but to build it differently, you would need to add some things to this. So just straight out of the box, you can build a T-80 shock tank company, and you've got 69 to 75 points. The box set does come with the rulebook. That's always nice. For a lot of games, the starter set doesn't include the rulebook. Blood and Plunder starter sets don't include the rulebook unless you get a 2-player starter set. Warhammers don't. In fact, most games, the rulebook ends up being separate unless it's some sort of 2-player starter set. The Team Yankee Soviet starter set also comes with dice. In fact, all of them come with dice. And it comes with a nice little Start Here booklet that gives you instructions on how to build the models and so on. And it also gives you all the unit cards to use for all of those units. So all in all, for $100, you get a fair amount of stuff. Next is Elder Scrolls Call to Arms, which is a game that I personally love, and we'll be covering it more in the future on this channel. But if you want to get just a straight faction starter with models that you can build a force out of, you're looking at right now either the Imperial or Stormcloak faction starter. That's kind of the closest you can really get to a single faction starter, because we're not covering two-player starters, because those often don't allow you to build real, legitimate forces. Both the Imperial and Stormcloak boxes of the hard plastic versions, at least, because you can also get them in resin if you want. The hard plastic Imperial and Stormcloak faction starters are $36 US on Modiphius's web store currently. Now, of course, you will have to pay shipping, and that price is subject to change because of the exchange rate between the US and the UK, because Modiphius is based in the UK. And currently, shipping is not inexpensive because they're going to ship it from the UK because their US distributor isn't fixed up yet. Now, in one of these boxes, you'll get 2 heroes and 3 followers. And you can build that out. In fact, I recently built them out this way. I recently demoed Elder Scrolls Call to Arms for a friend, and I was able to build 2 220-point forces. I'd prefer them to be 200 points, but I gave each hero some extra stuff like potions and some extra attachments like amulets and so on, just to make them a little more durable. But 220 points realistically out of one of those boxes isn't bad. Now, that does not give you the rulebook, it does not give you dice, it does not give you tokens, and the dice are specific to that game. They're not just regular D6s, so you'll have to buy the core rule box, which is a whole separate thing. So the faction starter ends up being quite a bit more expensive. It's generally, with shipping, certainly it'll end up being about $100 US. Next is kind of the elephant in the room, Warhammer 40,000. Warhammer 40,000 have these start collecting boxes. This is the Astra Militarum version. And these are very confusing products. First of all, most of these do not give the same amount of points worth of models in the box. Some you can get 500 points easily. Some you're only looking at 200 points. It's extremely variable. Not all the boxes are created equal. And some boxes have units where the units inside are they're just not very good. Now, this box, the Astra Militarum Start Collecting box, includes a Leman Russ battle tank, a full 10-man infantry squad, a single heavy weapons team, which you have to field these in multiples of 3 if you're going to field them on their own, or you can attach them to the infantry squad. And then it includes an Officio Prefectus Commissar. Now, I did some calculating, and you can, if you're loading out everything as much as you possibly can, get about 500 points out of this if you really go for it. And at 500 points, you can play Combat Patrol. Is this a good 500 point army? No. No, it's not. You will very likely lose. I mean, the Leman Russ in Combat Patrol is pretty decent, but you're just not going to have the bodies to hold objectives. You're going to get shredded. And even then, it's not even like 500 points exactly. Like, I don't remember the exact number. I don't have that paper with me because I misplaced it. But this is not what you're going to look for a Combat Patrol. But you can do it. Now, of course, this doesn't include the rulebook or the army book. It's just the models and the instructions. That's it. Now, adding in the army book, that's anywhere from $30 to $50. And then you might need to buy supplements. And then you need to buy the core rulebook, which is $50. Sometimes, usually you can get it for $50 if you look around a bit. But just straight MSRP, I think now it's $60. So it's pretty high for a price, and you're not getting a lot to start with. Now, you can go for these bigger bundle boxes, like the Indominus box was, the big name brand starters that have 2 forces in them and include the rulebook and so on, and those generally tend to be about $200. Those are generally a much better way to go, but that's 2 forces, and we're looking at stuff that gives you 1 force. Now, I'm not going to talk about Star Wars Legion. And the simple reason for that is there is no single faction starter. I am also not going to talk about Star Wars X-Wing, because that doesn't exist either. There are squadron packs, but they only give you 3 ships. You can build a force with an X-Wing and the Ghost, that's the 2nd edition box that comes with the Phantom 2, but then you need to buy 2 things, and you still need to buy the core box. I'm also not going to talk about Star Wars Armada, because I don't play Armada. I don't have a lot of reference to how the forces really stack up for the Republican Separatist fleet starters. I've played Armada, but I don't play it regularly, so I don't really know what's good or not. But we've talked about miniatures games, but now let's talk about something that's not a miniatures game. Let's talk about a trading card game, and I think a good one for that is Magic the Gathering. In this Ultra Pro cheap little deck box is my Anya Falconwrath Merciless Rage pre-constructed commander deck. These pre-constructed commander decks you can get anywhere from $40, $45 to $50. It really depends on where you buy them. Now, full disclosure, this is not technically just the precon. I have taken the precon and fixed it up. And these precon, or pre-constructed decks, are designed to let you play the commander format for just $45, $50. Now, of course, you're going to want to buy sleeves, you're going to want to buy a playmat, dice, etc. But for $50 maximum, usually, you can play commander. Now, between the precons, the power level is variable. Some are really good, some are not very good, and the ones that are really good, you often can't find. And if you do find them, they'll be really expensive. So $50 gives you this amount of cards. Now, it's thicker than the actual cards because these are all in sleeves. These are actually double sleeved because I'm very protective of my cards. But just out of the box, you can play Magic the Gathering with this. They don't come with a rule book. Such a thing is only available online. The comprehensive rule set for Magic the Gathering is hundreds of pages long and is available as a PDF download online. Also, just don't read the comprehensive rules. Only refer to the comprehensive rules if you're really not sure. Just have someone teach you. It's way better. But what if you don't want to play the Commander format? Commander is played between usually 4 people, and there's only 1 of each copy of the card, with the exception of basic lands. What if you want to do something else? What do you want to play? Regular, standard 60-card Magic with a 15-card sideboard. You want to play standard, you want to play modern, you want to play legacy. Then you're probably going to look at something like this. This is a challenger deck. This is the Hazoret Aggro challenger deck. This is not in production anymore. These are variable in price as well. I bought this for $60, but I saw others in the same set because they usually release these in multiples of 4. So there's the Hazoret Aggro, and then there was like Mardu Vehicles and so on. And those were cheaper, but this one was a better one, so it was $60. Now, this gets you 60 cards plus a 15-card sideboard, so 75 cards total. It'll also give you a spin-down die and a little sheet explaining how to play the deck. And it also gives you kind of this cardboard deck box, which is, not the worst. Now, when I bought this deck, this was a standard legal deck. But in Magic the Gathering, standard is a rotating format. So occasionally, some of the cards that are in standard will move out of standard. They will no longer be legal for standard play because new cards have come in. So now this is what is a modern deck. And this is a pretty good modern deck. Is this the most competitive modern deck you'll ever see? No. But you can play it. The other option with something like a trading card game is to build something, like go online, look up the cards, put together a deck list and buy the individual cards that you're looking for, put them together into a deck, and do something low power and inexpensive. Or alternately, high power and inexpensive. That exists too. And I know, yes, I hear everyone screaming, pay to win, pay to win, pay to win. I have a $65 Modern Werewolves deck that consistently trashes all the opposition, including $3,000 Modern decks. Pay to win is a myth. Okay, well, it's not really a myth. You pay more for the better cards, but there are niche circumstances in which you can get away with less. So, which of any of these options that we've gone over are too expensive? Well, let's take an example. I recently was talking to a friend of mine about Magic the Gathering. We were talking about various kinds of game balance and so on. And this is a guy who plays a lot of Star Wars Legion. He does a lot of 3D printing. He's getting into Warhammer 40,000. He used to play a lot of War Machine. And he said, with the amount of money that I spend on Legion, I can't imagine getting into Magic the Gathering because it's too expensive. Now, this is a guy that was getting into Warhammer. And we already went over the costs of Warhammer getting started. To build a full army is hundreds of dollars. To get started at Combat Patrol is probably going to be, not including the rulebook, at least $100 to $150 worth of models. You're probably looking at $150 to $200 of models, and then on top of that, the core rulebook, and on top of that, the army book. Again, you can get away with less. You could get away with 130 if you're doing Thousand Suns. You get the Thousand Suns start collecting and a Zangor Enlightened pack, and you're off to the races. 500-point Combat Patrol. But this is hundreds of dollars, whereas this, $60. So just based off of the comparison in price, this is much more expensive. However, if this is too expensive compared to this, then we're talking about a value call, a value judgment. When you spend hundreds of dollars, you get models, physical play pieces that you move around the battlefield. You have to build them, you have to paint them. So you not only get enjoyment out of playing the game, but you also get the enjoyment of building and painting the models. We love painting models. On the other hand, $60 gets you 75 little pieces of cardboard. Yes, you do push them around on a playmat, which is not that different to a tabletop war game, but it doesn't look as cool. Now, granted, if you want to play high-tier stuff, Magic the Gathering can be very, very expensive. I've seen stuff on YouTube and online where someone's talking about their budget legacy deck, and it's, $1,000. But those are people who want to play competitively. They like playing with the high-powered stuff. If you're okay with playing the lower-powered stuff, you're not going to spend as much money. Now, conversely to this previous example of my friend, I was talking to someone else who plays a lot of Magic the Gathering very avidly. And he said he doesn't want to get back into Warhammer because it's too expensive. I mean, $60, $100, plus rule books, plus this isn't very good, and this is. At that point, it is dollars. Now, for me, when I look at a miniature war game or a card game or something, I don't ask, is it too expensive? I ask, what is the value? What am I getting for my dollar? Is this worth the money to me? But see, I do this at the end of the process. I'll research a game. I'll build a list for what is this army going to look like? What do I'll figure out what faction or what style I want to play, and then I'll build a deck list or an army list based off of that, and then I'll price it out and ask myself, is this worth my time and money? If you're going to play a game and you have no one to play with, then it's not worth the money. If you're going to buy it and it's going to sit in a shelf forever, it's not worth the money. If you're never going to paint your models and you'll never even build them, then it's also not worth the money because you just paid money for nothing. But for me, I have people to play with. So I get to ask myself the question, is it worth it to me? There is no such thing as too expensive. That doesn't exist. Because that concept is very dependent on your own individual tastes. Some people will look at a Mercedes-Benz car and say, that is too expensive. Other people will look at a Mercedes-Benz car and say, that's fine, and they'll look at a Lamborghini and say, that's too expensive. And some people will look at a Lamborghini and say, that's fine, but what's above a Lamborghini? I don't know cars. But you get the idea. I've had people tell me that $60 for a video game is too expensive. I've heard people wax lyrical on the sunk cost fallacy. I also heard people wax lyrical about the benefits of ketchup on scrambled eggs. Doesn't mean that it's right, because it isn't. Don't put ketchup on your scrambled eggs. That's heresy. At the end of the day, this is a decision you have to make. Yes, I know this is another Chauncey Nebula, like, it's your decision, your life, your money, your models, do what you want. But it's true every time. Unlike those people who put ketchup on their scrambled eggs, who are wrong every time. Anyway, guys, let me know what you think in the comments below. Is there such a thing as too expensive? Is there a game that you feel is too expensive? Do you think that this concept of trying to rate too expensive is stupid? Do you think that there is a game that is definitively too expensive? Because if you do, I'd like to hear about it. And, as always, remember to like and subscribe. The thumbs up, the bell icon, all that jazz. You've heard it a million times before, and now you're hearing it again. So, guys, thanks for watching. And as always, I'll see you guys next time.